Hi, this is Kevin Trainer, and I'd like to welcome you to my tutorial on eliminating repeating columns. So this is a part of a series of tutorials that I've been working on logical database design. And as you can see from the graphic that I have up, there's a lot of components to logical database design. And currently we're in the third grouping, normalize, and we've completed remove redundant columns and remove redundant relationships. And we're just about to start eliminate repeating columns. And we'll have two more left after that. So let's take a look at our data model. And again, this is started out as a conceptual data model. The problem that we're working on is student attendance tracking. And I want to take you down to the bottom of the data model where at the end of the conceptual data modeling, I had multiple entities down here, and I didn't have a great example of a part of the design that had repeating columns. So I did a little bit of quick thinking, and when I messed up to the design so we could make normalization improvements in it, I took these columns, this is system administrator, and then use case 1, use case 2, use case 3. And there's one of the use cases, which is authorized user, in which somebody plays the role of system administrator. So that's one of the permissions that you would need. And then of course we have a bunch of other use cases as well. And here I've just imagined that we've decided, however right or wrongly, that we're going to give permission to users by use case. Okay. Now that's not always what people do. Sometimes they do it more by role. Okay, so a particular role will be able to do a number of use cases, but we only have a couple of roles here, so that wouldn't be quite so much fun. So here I've decided that we're going to give permissions to run use cases by use case. And the system administrator permission is just one more of those. So as you can see it, now we've got 4 use cases that we need permission for. And this really looks like a column that repeats. Use case 1, use case 2, use case 3. And we've got, I think, if you look at the use case model, we've got 12, something like that. So this is a good group of repeating columns. So here's what we typically do. Having something that repeats like this is very much denormalized and very much not the way we do things with relational databases. What we typically do is we take this information and we capture it in its own table, and then we either link directly to the table if we have a one-to-many relationship, or if we have, in this case, we're going to have a many-to-many relationship, we'll create an intersecting table, an associative table, to manage the many-to-many. So here we already have a table for the user, and now I'm going to create a table for the use cases. So let's just pull that out. Okay, and I'm going to put it right here, and I'm going to give it the name use case. And of course, I want to show the attribute types from the beginning. So each use case is going to have an ID, use case ID, and it's going to have a use case name. Okay, and the use case name is probably not an int, it's probably a varchar or varchar if you go with the popular way to say that. And that's probably all that we need. This is just sort of a lookup table. We just want to know what use cases are we giving away permission for within the system. So the second attribute we're going to cut. So now that's cut. Okay, and now if we didn't have a many-to-many problem, if we didn't have that a single user could have permission to run many use cases, and a use case could be run by many users, well, then we wouldn't need to create this associative table. But we do. So let's create an associative table in order to resolve the many-to-many relationship. Okay. And what would we call this? Well, there's two ways to name these. One is to come up with a name that really makes sense within the application, and I have one. But before I use that, I want to say, how would you do it? Well, you just take the names of the two tables. They're now tables, not entities. And you use them, you put them together. So you call it use case system user. And most database people will say, I bet that's an associative table that connects the use case table to the system user table. And that's exactly what that is. Okay? Instead, I'm going to call it permission, because each of these entries is a permission. Okay? So, what are the, what's going to form the primary key? Well, the primary key for an associative or intersection table is combined to the primary keys of the two primary tables that participate in this many-to-many relationship. So that's use case ID, user ID. So the first one we're going to put in use case ID, right? And then we're going to add another one. So let's add a primary key after that. And say it's user ID. Okay. And then do we have any regular old attributes? And, you know, we could have them. We could record the date and time in which we gave this system user permission to do the use case. We could record a lot of stuff, but I'm not going to. Nobody's really identified a requirement that says that I need to do that. So I'm just going to leave that out. So I'm going to cut both of these attributes because there are no data columns. There are only key columns. And then how am I going to set up the relationships? Well, the many side of the one-to-manys, which these turn into now, is always up against this associative table or entity. Okay, so let's pull out a relationship, and let's hook the many side to permission. Okay, that looks good. And let's take the one side and hook it to system user. And not sure that worked exactly the way I wanted it to, but let's try to get the whole thing to light up. I got the whole thing to light up there. Okay, and let's do the same thing again, but come over here to connect it to use case. So again, we want the many side to connect to permission. And now I'm going to try to grab the one side, although that might be hard to do. It might be it right there. And we want to connect that to, so I've got them at the wrong ends. So let's see if we can repair this. So first of all, let's drag this around so it looks a little better. Okay, so now it's looking a little better. And now we're just going to highlight, right click, and we're going to change the beginning and the end symbols. Okay, so the beginning one says 0 or more, so let's change that to 1 and only 1. And then let's change the end symbol. It says 1 and only 1. Let's change that to 0 or more. And now we have what we need. So now we've got too many columns in system user, because if we want to show that a particular user has permission to run the use case that you need to be a system admin to run, well then we connect that use case, which is authorized user, we connect that row to that system user row given a permission, right? Okay, and we can do that for any of the use cases. So let's get rid of those old style repeating columns. And we have another repeating column. And another one. Oh, that wasn't what we want. So let's undo with Control Z. And let's get somehow this diagrammer and I don't get along as well as one would really hope. Okay, so let's still having a hard time with the diagrammer. Okay. There it is. So now we're going to cut. And now we're going to try to highlight one again. And we're going to cut that. All right. So what were repeating columns here have been moved off into a table. Okay. And the table works well because you can represent all the use cases that you want. And now because we have a many-to-many relationship, we are going to have an associative table. Some people call these intersection tables in between. And our repeating columns are gone. So having gotten rid of the repeating column, I'm going to say bye until the next part.